Episode 1: The Road into Dust. The ancient oaks of Elwyn Forest faded behind you, their leaves whispering secrets of a greener time. Ahead lay Westfall, once the golden breadbasket of the kingdom, now a land forsaken, eaten away by the slow decay of time. As your boots crossed the stone boundary, the very air seemed to shift. Gone was the scent of pine needles and warm hearths. Here, the wind carried only dust and the smell of smoke. The fields rolled toward the horizon, but they no longer shone with the gold of ripening wheat. They were scorched and brown, brittle as dry straw. Every fence lay broken, and every farmhouse sagged under the weight of years of neglect. Even the sky felt vast and empty here, as if the land had been stripped bare. A lone scarecrow stood crooked in the field, its tattered coat snapping in the wind like the banner of a defeated army. You followed the cracked dirt road toward a small gathering of tents near the bridge, the only sign of life in the wasteland. A handful of ragged workers huddled around their cooking fires, their faces drawn tight with hunger. Upon one man's shoulder hung the badge of the Militia, though the leather was cracked and the metal dulled by age. He turned his gaze upon you. "You come from the forest?" he asked, his voice rough as grinding stones. "Then you have seen better days than these. Westfall is broken, and we hold only a fragile shield against the dark." Behind him, a battered banner fluttered. The Lion of Stormwind, once bright blue, was now little more than a ghostly smear of color. Bandits raid our fields. Great machines built to serve now wander the farms without masters, and it is whispered that a hooded figure stirs up malice in the shadows. He shook his head sorrowfully. "If you offer aid, then even the hand of a stranger is welcome in these twilight hours." His words were not an order, but a plea born of deep despair. As you looked out over the ruined farmlands, the weight of it fell upon you. This was no mere battlefield, it was a kingdom fading into history. The end of this land was yet unwritten. You tightened your grip on your gear and nodded. Westfall had need of a champion, and you had stepped into its story. Episode 2: The Watchers of Iron. You left the bridge behind, and the safety of the woods became a memory. The road ahead was flanked by fields that rippled like a golden ocean, yet up close the illusion shattered. The stalks were dead, rattling against one another with the sound of dry bones. But it was not the silence of the fields that chilled the blood, it was the noise that broke it. To your left, near the ruins of a collapsed barn, a shape moved. It was a lumbering hulk of wood and iron, towering twice the height of a man, a harvest watcher. It wandered in a jagged circle, its single rotating eye glowing with a dull red heat. These golems were built to harvest the grain, to serve the farmers who once thrived here. Now they harvested nothing but dust, guardians of a land that held no life. You crouched low in the ditch that ran alongside the road, watching it pass. The machine let out a vent of steam that hissed like a dying breath. It didn't see you, or perhaps it didn't care. It was a ghost in a shell. Moving on, you kept to the shadows until you reached the Jansen homestead. If the bridge had been a place of despair, this was a place of tragedy. A wagon lay overturned in the yard. Crates were smashed open, their contents, meager sacks of oats, spilled into the dirt. Yet it was not the work of animals. The wood was chopped by axes, not clawed by beasts. You approached a sack stamped with the royal crest of Stormwind. A dark stain marred the canvas.
You ran a gloved finger over the wood of the wagon. There, caught on a splinter, was a scrap of cloth. It was not the rough wool of a farmer. It was red silk, a mask. The guard had whispered of bandits, but this was something designed. You stood up, the scrap of red cloth tight in your fist. The wind howled again, carrying a sound from the south, the distant rhythmic hammering of Sentinel Hill. That was where the answers lay.
Episode 3: Shadows on the Farm. The journey toward the hill was not lonely. You saw movement near a broken wagon ahead. A woman stood beside it, staring at the wreck with sorrowful eyes. She looked at you, cautious but hopeful. You are not from this country. If your path leads to Sentinel Hill, take care. The gnolls are starving, and when the wolf starves, he becomes desperate. You offered your strength to aid her, but as you lifted a crate, a low growl rolled through the high grass. Gnolls. 3 of them emerged, their fur matted and mangy. One carried a rusted cleaver, grim with use. Another dragged a chicken coop behind him, splintered and empty. The woman retreated. "Do not let them surround us." They rushed forward with the speed of starving beasts. You stood your ground. The first fell quickly, for it was too weak to stand against a trained warrior. The second hesitated, seeing its packmate fall, and fled back into the wilds. The last circled you, sniffing the air, before it too turned and ran. The woman let out a sigh. "You are a blessing in this dark hour," she said quietly. "There are few who would stop to aid a stranger, not in Westfall." Together you walked until the rooftops of Sentinel Hill appeared, but it was not the fortress it once was. The tower was wrapped in scaffolding, repairs abandoned half done. Around its base lay a sprawling camp, hundreds of refugees living on thin rations and thinner hope. A guard near the gate stiffened. "Listen, the horn sounds. Trouble on the southern border. The Defias are coming." He looked at you, seeing the dust of the road on your boots and the steel at your hip. "Traveler, if you still remember the face of duty, we need you on the ridge. Hurry." Episode 4: The Commander. You crested the ridge just as the fighting ended. A company of the militia drove back a handful of figures wearing red masks. The bandits scattered into the fields, melting away like mist. Standing in the center of the road, watching them flee, was a towering man on a great war horse. He wore heavy armor, and his face was etched with a weariness that sleep could not fix. Grian Stoutmantle, commander of the People's Militia. He turned his gaze to you. "You fight with skill," he rumbled, his voice deep as the roots of the mountains. "Better than these boys I try to train with sticks and stones." He gestured to the sprawling, sad camp behind him. "Look at them. Farmers, masons, men of honest heart. They beg for scraps in the dust because the king has forgotten them, but the Brotherhood of the Defias has not." He walked closer, lowering his voice. "I cannot send my army out. If I leave the hill, the gnolls will overrun these families. I need someone who can walk in the shadows. I have news from the Furbrow farm to the west, the ones who tended the horse Old Blanchy. Silence has fallen on their house." He pressed a heavy badge into your hand, the crest of the militia. "Seek out the Furbrow lands. Discover what doom has befallen them. If there is a threat, end it. Westfall is a graveyard of secrets, traveler. Do not let yourself become one of them." Episode 5: The Taste of Westfall. You stepped out of the tower, the weight of the commander's badge heavy in your pocket. The mission was urgent, but your body had its own demands. You hadn't eaten since the forest, and the hollow ache in your stomach was becoming a roar. Drifting through the dust of the camp was a scent that didn't belong, something rich, savory, and deep. You followed it to a large iron cauldron bubbling over a fire. A woman with flour in her hair and a wooden spoon like a scepter stood guard. This was Salma Saldine. She wasn't a soldier, but out here she commanded just as much respect. You stepped forward, eyeing the broth. "Do not look too hard," Salma said without turning around. "It is not beautiful, but it keeps the cold away." "I am willing to pay," you said. Salma laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "Gold? You cannot eat gold, traveler, and we are running low on everything else. You want a bowl of Westfall stew? You do not buy it, you earn it." She pointed the spoon at you. "The meat is scarce. I need the flesh of the carrion birds, vultures picking at the fields, and I need the snouts of the gore tusks, not the small ones, the great beasts that tear up the fences. You bring me the ingredients, and I will not only feed you, I will teach you the way of it. It might be the only thing that keeps you alive." It was not the meal you wanted, but it was the meal you needed. You headed back out into the fields. This was not a battle for the kingdom, it was a hunt for survival. You found the vultures first, circling a dead machine. They were vile creatures, smelling of rot. When you brought one down, the meat was tough and lean. Next came the gore tusk. You tracked the beast through the tall grass, listening for the heavy grunt of its breathing. When it charged, it was like a battering ram of muscle. You sidestepped, striking hard, claiming the prize. Bloody and tired, you returned to the camp, placing the grim ingredients onto Salma's table. She nodded. "Good. Now watch closely." She chopped the meat, tossing it into the boiling water, along with spices that smelled like the earth itself. "The secret," she explained, her voice softening, "is to boil it until the toughness leaves. You take what the land gives you, even the ugly parts, and you let the fire change it. That is how we survive in Westfall. We take the bad and we make it sustain us." She handed you a wooden bowl. The stew was brown and thick. You took a bite. It was wild. It was rough, but as the warmth spread through your chest, chasing away the chill of the coming night, it tasted like a feast. "Now you know," Salma said. "Go on then, the road does not wait." You finished the bowl, feeling strength return to your limbs. You were ready for the dark. Episode 6. The Silent Farm. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time you reached the Furbrow farm. The sky was a bruised purple, casting long, twisted shadows across the fields. The silence here was heavy. The wagon sat slumped in the yard, its wheel broken. You approached the farmhouse. The front door was swinging slowly on a single hinge. You stepped inside. The dinner table was still set. 2 bowls of stew sat cold, a thick layer of dust already settling on the surface. A chair was overturned. You knelt by the fireplace. The ashes were cold. You reached in and pulled out a heavy brass locket. When you opened it, the faces of a man and a woman smiled back at you from a faded painting. The Furbrows. You froze. Someone or something was still in the house. You drew your weapon, the steel whispering against leather. Creeping up the stairs, the wood groaning under your weight, you reached the bedroom. Empty, but the window was open, and on the floor, carved into the wood with a knife, was a symbol, a cogwheel inside a fist. Is it safe?" You spun around. A man, skinny and shaking, crawled out from a wardrobe, a farmhand. "They took them," he wheezed. "Men in red masks. They took the Furbrows. They took the deed to the land. They said the Brotherhood needs the mines." Episode 7. The Ambush. Before you could ask more, a bottle shattered against the wall near your head. Liquid fire splashed across the room. "Burn it down! Leave no witnesses!" a voice shouted from the yard. You grabbed the farmhand and shoved him toward the back window. "Run! Get to Sentinel Hill!" You kicked the front door open, weapon raised. 3 Defias thugs stood in the yard, torches in hand. They weren't hiding anymore. They wore the red masks proudly. The first one lunged with a dagger. You parried, the metal ringing out in the night air, and drove a boot into his chest. The second swung a torch, the flames licking at your face.
You ducked, rolling across the dry dirt, and came up striking. These men were trained. They fought with a discipline that farmers did not possess. As the last bandit fell in the dust, you searched his pockets. No gold, no food, just a letter, sealed with red wax. You broke the seal. The light from the burning farmhouse was just enough to read the scrawled handwriting. Collect the deeds, secure the mines. The juggernaut requires more metal. Van Cleef grows impatient.
Episode 8. The Messenger. The run back to Sentinel Hill was grueling. The smell of smoke still clung to your clothes. The letter in your pocket felt heavy, like a stone dragging you down. The camp was quiet when you arrived. The refugees slept fitfully, huddled under their thin blankets, but the light in the tower still burned. Grian Stoutmantle was where you left him, staring at a map of the kingdom. He looked up as you entered, seeing the blood on your armor and the grim set of your jaw. "You have the look of a man who has seen the fire," he said. You placed the letter on the table. Stoutmantle read it, his face hardened. The weariness vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. "Van Cleef," he whispered. The name sounded like a curse. "I thought he was a myth, a ghost story to scare the merchants." He slammed a fist onto the table. "He is building something, a juggernaut. They aren't just stealing grain, traveler. They are building an engine of war right under our noses." He walked to the window, looking south toward the dark, jagged coastline. The furlobes were not taken for ransom. They were taken for labor. The Brotherhood has reopened the Deadmines. He turned back to you. "This is no longer a militia matter. This is war, and I have no soldiers to send into the dark. I have only you." Episode 9. The Oath. Stoutmantle unsheathed his sword. The steel gleamed in the candlelight. "The Deadmines lie to the south," he said, his voice low and deadly, "beneath the ghost town of Moonbrook. It is a labyrinth of tunnels, thieves, and machines." He looked you in the eye. "I cannot order you to go. To enter that pit is to step into the throat of the beast. But if Van Cleef finishes this machine, if this juggernaut rises, Stormwind will burn." He held out his hand. "You came to Westfall a stranger, but tonight you leave as its shield. Will you finish what you started? Will you go into the dark so that these people might see the dawn?" You looked at the refugees outside, the families, the broken men, the children sleeping in the dirt. You looked at the badge of the militia. You didn't need to speak. You simply nodded. You turned south, toward the coast, toward Moonbrook. The wind howled one last time, no longer a mournful cry, but a battle horn. The fields were silent now. The scarecrows watched you pass. The Deadmines awaited, and the Brotherhood would learn that Westfall was not defenseless.